Hello and welcome to another episode of Who Knew in the Moment, the podcast. I'm your host, Phil Friedrich, and today I'm honored to have Patrick Ganino with me. Patrick is the founder of Creative Evolution and does just absolutely amazing mural work. He also has a social media company and kind of promotion that he runs, so we'll get to highlight that. But one of the things I want to highlight, and I think you're going to hear throughout his story, is how if you have resilience and tenacity, you'll figure out a way to make it work. So, Patrick, thanks so much for being on.
Thanks for having me, my friend.
You bet. So to start your story, grew up in the Connecticut area, and you,
Mhm.
you always enjoyed kind of drawing, and eventually you started to paint in your bedroom some murals. So talk a little bit about the progression and what about it, art really drew you into it.
Yeah, I mean, I doodled as a kid. I mean, I was definitely I was that guy who doodled in the textbooks at school, and I always thrived within art. And thankfully, I had parents that were uh, they were supportive. Listen, I'm an X generation. I mean, how old are you?
33,
33. So, are you considered X generation?
technically a millennial. I don't like to claim it though.
All right. Well, basically, I mean, the way we grew up was our parents kind of left us alone, and we left them alone, and that was it. But my parents gave me maybe a tad more freedom, even so. They didn't mind if I drew on the walls in my bedroom. I mean, I would literally take a Sharpie and draw these elaborate drawings, throughout the walls, and they loved it. I mean, I don't know if they necessarily wanted me to become an artist, but they didn't mind that sort of creative flow, and they also had the thought process of, we can paint the wall. I mean, my mom was
Yeah,
that type of person where she would go in and she would just paint rooms or remove wallpaper, or add wallpaper, and it wasn't a huge chore.
yeah.
So I grew up doodling, and I would say probably I went to church. My neighbor across the street was a reverend, so we had a church that we would go to, and I reluctantly would go to church because it was super early in the morning, and they had me designing, like, drawing the little covers of the church pamphlets.
Oh, yeah.
And then I think in seventh grade, I started, designing T-shirts. I would literally buy Hanes white T-shirts and Sharpies again, and I would draw these drawings on them, and I would sell them at school. And then, so I was constantly, entrepreneurial, and I was looking for ways to make money, and it didn't really matter, what it was. It didn't have to be art, but art seemed the simplest for me because I was good at it and nobody else did it, frankly. And so that was sort of the beginning of it. And then, I went on to college and dropped out very quickly and started doing murals for, my best friend was working in a nightclub, and I did a mural there, and I was parking cars as a valet. So I pitched the restaurant owner on doing a mural there, and it just kept evolving, and to the point where I came back. I was in Florida when I was doing the murals for school, and I came back to Connecticut, and I got a job for like a year, and I was like, this is not for me, man. It was too constrained. It was that corporate world where um, my personal feelings were they were assessing your capabilities on different activities that didn't really make any logical sense. I remember one time I went to the bathroom like 4 times that day, and as men, if we have to pee, it's pretty quick. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
And I remember my manager pulled me in her office, and she was like, Patrick, we've noticed you use the bathroom quite a bit today. And I was like, are you kidding me? Like, is this real? And I think I was like 21 or 22. And I was like, I'm out of here. I can't do it. I just can't do it. And I never looked back.
Right. So there's a story I want to highlight in your time in Florida, and then we'll jump back to present moment that you had just referenced. So you're down in Florida, and to your point, you get the opportunity to do a mural, but you hadn't negotiated a price beforehand. And I like to highlight that because I think, sometimes people will look at where you're at now by the end of the episode and be like, man, Patrick's always crushing it. It's like, well, there were some learning, stumbling blocks along the way. So talk about that first business endeavor where we named the price post production instead of before production.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, I'm still learning lessons today, but I would say the first 5, 10 years is the majority of the lessons. Those are the big ones, which you just add to your sort of arsenal, and it fine tunes you as a business person in general. Yeah, I was valet parking for this restaurant down in South Florida, and I pitched him on a mural, and he was like, "Yeah, all right." And I was pumped. I was super pumped. I was like, I got this mural job. I grabbed my friend Justin. We went, and we did this exterior mural, and I came, and I was like, all right, man. I was like, it's done. I was like, what do you think? He's like, I love it. I love it. I was like, all right, cool. I was like, it's gonna be like $2,000. And he's like, no. And I was like, what? He's like, bro, we didn't talk about a price. And I was like, what do you mean? What do you mean? And I don't remember what he gave me. It was quite a bit less, but it was the first big learning lesson that I think anybody does. It seems like such a simple thing. It really does. It seems simple, like you give the person a price, you do the job. But I talk to entrepreneurs on a regular basis, whether they're in the art field or just general, and and that seems to be the biggest holdup. The biggest problem is not getting paid what you want because you don't explain what it costs prior to, or you may be in the middle of a project and they may be adding things on, and you don't give them a price then as well, and it becomes an issue.
Right. So to your point on that, and once again, as your career's progressed, the pieces you've done and the opportunities have become larger in size and in, we'll say, notoriety. And I think something that people can struggle with along the way is feeling like their worth is worth what they're asking for, right? Sometimes you're like, I can't ask for that much money, even though you know in your heart of heart, like, I've dedicated my life to this. Like, this is going to take me 30 hours, right? I mean, there's all of these reasons as to why you should, but it's hard to almost like utter those words out of your mouth, like, well, this is what I'm asking for. So talk a little bit
One
about
second.
that projection. Yeah.
So yeah, basically the way and this was probably my third or fourth year in business. I remember doing a mural for a restaurant, and it was like a mid-level restaurant. It was kind of a mom and pop on a larger level, and and it was one of the first bigger projects I'd done. So the number, and again, I don't remember the number at this point. It's 25 years ago, 23 years ago, but I remember at that point it was a very big number for me, and I kind of convinced myself to make that number something smaller in my head. So let's say it's $10,000 or $5,000. In my mind, I convinced myself that when I'm saying $5,000, it's $500. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I knew I was worth it. I just knew I wasn't comfortable asking for it because at the time I was so young. I was in my early mid 20s. I hadn't really experienced that kind of money.
Yeah.
So that's what I did. And even today, today's a little bit different, but I don't look at the number as a big number. I look at it, this is what it is. You're either my clientele or you're not my clientele.
Yeah. I love it.
So
Now back to your point. So time in Florida, college isn't the thing. So then you end up coming back up to Connecticut. Now, this is a point for a lot of people in their life, right? Someone listening right now is saying, man, but I can only imagine what the parents thought, or I can only imagine what, friends thought. Like, oh man, he dropped out of school, he's quitting his job and he's going to go be an artist, right? Like, oh no, is he going to be able to support himself? So talk a little about, navigating those difficult decisions and either the support or lack thereof and how you fight through that.
it's tough because and again, I think time has changed, with the internet and TikTok and social media and what we see and the information we take in now. But, you've got to understand, we're talking 20 something, 25 years ago. We didn't have Facebook. We didn't have, the internet was just kind of coming about. When we traveled, we used books with maps in them. You know what I mean? And if we need, something made, we go to Staples and print it out. I mean, that was our marketing material. So, um, I was torn because society has said you need to go to college.
Yeah.
But in my heart, it wasn't for me. I wasn't interested. I didn't have the passion for it. And therefore, and it wasn't like I was against learning or not interested in learning, but there was something about the way that schools taught where it would just bore me to death, and I would literally fall asleep. I mean, almost every day. And
Yeah.
even in high school, I mean, I barely graduated high school. I was in the honors classes. I tested very well, but I would fall asleep in class. And I had to actually convince, my teachers at the end of my senior year to graduate me, and I was like, listen, this is not what I'm going to be doing. And they loved me. I mean, I had a good personality. I got along with people.
Yeah.
And I had that sales ability. I mean, I had done sales, by the time I was a senior in high school, I've been doing door-to-door sales. I mean, I had the ability down to feel comfortable going up and selling an idea of something to somebody. But as far as like not going to college, I was torn. It took me probably a good 5-6 years where I was able to let go of the societal sort of demands or expectations. And I was okay with it. I mean, and I have 3 kids. I have 2 boys who are 19 and 20, and a daughter who's 24 and 25, and she didn't go to college. She's doing medical coding, and she's doing great. She's
Yeah.
completely independent. I have to beg her to take money from me. My boys came to me and they asked me, should I go to college? And I was like, guys, this is on you, man. It's up to you. Like,
Yeah.
I didn't go. That doesn't mean it's the right route to go.
Yeah.
If you want to do it, do it. I didn't want to do it, so it was a waste of time and money. My family, my whole family supported me as an artist, meaning they supported me drawing and they
Yeah.
supported my painting. As far as a career goes, yeah, I mean, I would say quite a few of them were like, it's not a good idea. You're not gonna, it's not a career. You cannot make money doing this. And it wasn't until probably, 5 or 10 years in that they were all like, we knew you could do it. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah. For sure.
Yeah. But I
So
mean, I think art or anything, I think you could thrive in most fields. I happen to be in a field that is it's limited to only a certain amount of people. There's not much competition. It's a product nobody needs. It's a want. But I like that. I like it a lot.
yeah. So as you're growing and progressing your business, there's a few different jobs that we're going to highlight, but one of them is the Brooklyn building mural. And I thought that was such an interesting story, just due to one, the size of it and what you had to do to get it done, but two, kind of the timing and the financials of all of that and when it was going down. So talk a little bit about how that project came to be and doing that one and some of the side
Yeah.
stories that come along with that.
So that was a long time ago. That's got to be 2008 or 9 or something like
Yeah.
that. And that was by far the largest mural I had done at that period, and the largest money mural as well. I'd done a project prior to that that was a little bit more, a little bit pricier, but this was just a big mural.
Yeah.
Man, I got brought into it. I'd done a lot of decorative painting. Decorative painting would be like I can make a wall look like wood or marble or gold leaf, plastering, or anything like that. And I just done a Judge Judy's house in Greenwich, and it was a 20,000 square foot house. And I brought on like 6 or 7 people to help because it was such a large project, and we had a very short period of time to finish it. From that project, the gentleman who brought me in, that was the one who referred the 12-story building. And it was my first real dealings with a developer in New York City. And I mean, listen, it's different rules. It's a different landscape, and it's kind of the Wild West. I mean, these guys are loud, sort of spoken individuals. They own tons of buildings in New York, and they like to bark a lot, and they like to hold money, and it's a dangerous place. So I remember getting on the job. Listen, I had no idea what I was doing. I mean, it was a 12-story building. They wanted me to take a brick facade, make it look like a brownstone, add murals on each floor, and I forget, it was a 3 or 4-story tall Statue of Liberty in the bottom. And I remember going to it, and thankfully I was connected with the contractor, Barry Clark, and he was my age, man. And I actually just did a project for him recently. It's funny, I'm still in touch with him. Nice Irish guy, but he's a New Yorker, man. He's a Irish Queens kid,
Yeah.
And he kind of took me aside, man, and he gave me a couple points. He's like, Pat, here's the deal, man. You got to pay the doorman. You got to pay this guy. You got to pay this guy in the building. If you don't pay those guys, all your product, all your materials are going to go missing. And I'm like, fuck, really? I was like, all right. So I paid those guys. And then I needed to hire a company to put up the window washer plank with the 2 engines that bring you up the building. And he told me how to navigate that. And there were all these weird, different sort of things that you had to sort of navigate within there. And that's on top of dealing with your client, who you have to, get paid by, because they were
Right.
slow. And there were a couple points, man, because what we did was I needed to hire a second guy just to run the other engine. There's an engine on either side, and I can't run across. You got to do them at the same time. So I hired a guy literally just to go on that side. I trained him on doing the brownstone, and he did a phenomenal job. His name's Ryan. And we basically rented a little flat in Brooklyn, and we would walk to work every day. And there were a couple points during the project where they weren't paying us, and we were out of money, man. And I was like, listen, you got to pay us, or we're going home. We're done. And he'd be like, all right, come to the office. So we'd have to go to Manhattan, get our money, come back. And I remember at one point he took a little too long to pay us. So I had like a car that wasn't worth much, and I literally sold it just to have the money to keep the project going. I mean, it was a period where I wasn't financially sound like I am today. And I just had to do what I had to do.
Yeah. Well, so there's a couple things to dive into there, but one of them is, you're basically paycheck to paycheck here, right? Or, payment to payment, right?
Yeah.
And yet you had mentioned that it was still one of the most enjoyable times in your life. You were just enjoying what you were doing, you're having fun. And I think sometimes we get caught up in, well, I'm not making enough money, so I don't know if I should keep doing this. And don't get me wrong, right? You do need to make money, right? That's an important element. But sometimes it's just enjoying what you're doing when you're doing it, knowing like the finances will continue to come. So talk about that balancing act for you.
Well, I think that goes with any job though. Like, when you start a career at, 22, 23, 24, you go into a job, you're making $25 an hour, $20 an hour, whatever it is, and you struggle financially. So there's no difference. It's just that, when you're an entrepreneur, you're constantly hunting for that food. You're hunting for that next job. Whereas if you are a career person within a company, you have that paycheck every week. But the limitations there is you're looking for your 3% raise every year, your promotion, and, you got to make sure that this manager, I don't have to do any of that. So, I didn't, for many years, when I found myself in a financial predicament, that's when my creative problem solvings went into overdrive. And some of the most amazing things I've ever done have come from the fact that I didn't have money and I had to be creative. So there's a lesson to be learned there. I mean, there really is. I mean, I think any entrepreneur, any seasoned entrepreneur, they all have those war stories of going to the ATM and maybe overdrafting your account to get gas to go get the job. I mean, you did what you had to do. But as far as even getting jobs, though, I was super creative at getting jobs with a low overhead or no overhead, and it made me rely on my networking skills more than anything. So I focused on that. I focused on the phone. I focused on letters. When email came out, I focused on emails, and I focused on creating a solid network. And I still believe in that today. I tell my kids all the time, I'm like, your network's everything. You may be better for the job, but if that guy knows that guy, he's getting the job. So, it's all about the energy you put out in the room and how people feel when you leave, right?
Love that. Now, I messed up the story. You already mentioned it, but since we're talking about networking, we're going to go back to it. So, as you're growing your business, you start having some classes and you say, hey, I could teach other people how to do some of this work. And so, one weekend, you have maybe 20, 30 different folks show up. And from that comes the Judge Judy House. So, talk a little bit about the classes you're running and kind of the business side of that, and then how the connection with one of the gentlemen comes about months and months down the road.
Okay. So, the internet's kind of coming about at this point, right? I mean, it's slow. It's dial up, people don't realize how slow it was. Like you wanted an image to load and it was like this, you know?
Yeah.
So we had gotten a job doing like a Venetian plaster. Venetian plaster is layers of plaster compressed, and it eventually looks like glass. It's beautiful. It's very expensive and it's very hard to do. And we had gotten a big job, and that was part of it. And it was a great money job for us, but we didn't know how to do it. So we found a class up in Boston, this company called Flow Like a Pro, and they were teaching these classes. So I brought my main guy, Mike, because at this point in the decorative painting, I had a couple guys, and Mike Sindel was my number one guy. I mean, he handled everything. He was a dream employee. I mean, literally, like if a problem arrived, he solved it and told me afterwards,
Yeah. Yeah.
You know how rare that is.
Yes.
So we go up to this class and we're sitting in there, and there's like 15 people in there. And we spent, it was like, I don't know, it was either $1,200 or $1,500 for a 5-day class. And I'm looking around and I'm doing the math, and I'm like, 1,500 times 15. I'm like, these people are killing it. And they're not even climbing on a ladder. So I ended up coming back to Connecticut. And at the same time, I was sort of talking to this lady who was doing a forum for artists, and I decided to do my own faux forum. So I created this online forum for decorative painters and artists and muralists. And I started basically going and getting all these people from all over the country and the world. And they would come on and they would talk about decorative painting, murals, business, what have you. And it was an unbelievable place. At the same time, I was looking to create some sort of passive income. I had been doing it long enough. I was affecting my back, and physically it was just draining. So I was like, I could do this class. So I went and I basically built this website. I created a curriculum, and on the website, I put all the steps for each class. So if you want to learn Venetian plaster, I would take a picture of a sample board and then rolling on the plaster. And then the third step was troweling it on. And so even with the murals, I would do all the steps. I would put everything online. And I remember other schools, decorative painting schools, would contact me and be like, how are you're literally giving away classes for free. And I go, no. I'm not giving the classes away for free. I'm taking away the fear of taking the class. And I would
Mm.
fill up my classes all the time. So I would have these classes full. I had this forum that was going on. I ended up getting to the point where Sherwin-Williams was calling me. They wanted to advertise on my site and fly me to Cleveland to learn about their faux finish glaze. It was called Faux Impressions. And it was all just coming together. And it was my first taste of, you know, making money online from advertising, leveraging off knowledge and leveraging off having a large group of people that you know could add value to a company. And it was phenomenal. I don't really, I knew, you know, every time I would do something weird, I knew there were bigger things coming. I didn't know what, but I knew that it was going in the right direction. And that's where you just have to wait for those opportunities to arrive and then take advantage of them. Because that's the other problem. I mean, a lot of people will have opportunities present themselves in front of them and they don't recognize it's an opportunity, you know, and that's half the game is recognizing those opportunities and then, you know, betting on yourself, you know?
Yeah. Well, and I think to, you know, that story, it's a prime example, right? I didn't actually know how to do the job that I was getting the bid to do the job for, but I was willing to go find a way to figure out how to do the job. So, you know, talk to somebody right now that's been doubting themselves, right? They're like, gosh, I just don't know if I'm capable, right? And they're in that mental headspace of taking the leap. And it's like, you know what? Sometimes you have to take the leap and figure out how it's going to work out once you've taken the leap.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, look, the bottom line is like, how bad do you want it?
Yeah.
How bad do you want it? How bad do you want, you know, sometimes people think entrepreneurs have it easy. And I do talk to some people and they look at my life and they're like, oh, you got a great life. And I'm like, I do have a great life, but I
Yeah.
still work hard for it. You know what I mean? Like, how bad do you want it? Do you want to be an artist? You know, if you want to be an artist, then you got to go be an artist. I mean, you know, if you're not going to go to a classical school or be classically trained, well, then you have to learn on your own. And then, you know, you're fully capable of doing it. But what kind of time are you going to put into it? Are you going to watch Netflix tonight? Are you going to lay on your hammock this weekend? I mean, what are you going to do? Because I I forego all of it. I mean, I gave up any sort of personal time early on, and I still work hard, but I gave up all that time, and I put it into building a business, building the strength within the business because I wanted to be an artist, and I saw the value there, and there was nothing going to stop me.
I
So
love it.
I'll give you another example. You asked about
Yeah.
fear.
Yeah.
I have this in my wallet. This is a card. This thing is old, man. This is 25 years old. I haven't pulled this out in a long time. Let's see if I have it. All right. So early on, I recognized what my values were within being an entrepreneur and an artist, and I also recognized what I didn't have and what I needed. So I
Yeah.
just wrote, and this is what we had. This is called this is our Rolodex, and
Yeah.
we would write a name on it, and then you know what I mean. So I pulled a
Yeah.
card out, and basically I wrote down what I needed to be better at or to have in general to succeed, and then I'll read it to you. So basically,
Uh,
said, "Be you got to be hard, man. I mean, life is difficult. You got to be difficult back. Life is a hard road to go down, and you have to be hard to go down it. That's it. Or you can lay down and you can get that 9 to 5 job. Nothing wrong with that, but you're going to be working for someone else. So you have to be willing to go through those hard times, and those hard times could be just the hardness of work." Or the struggle of finances, or the struggle of family life with finances, with work, or what have you, right?
yeah.
Be smart. You know, you got to be smart with what you're doing. You got to think about it. Like, you know, you can take a project that you've never done before, but you have to go get the education to do it. Right. I didn't
Yeah.
just go in blindly and be like, I can do this and do it. I learned how to do it.
Yes.
Patience. I lacked a lot of patience. I probably still do to this day, but I have a lot more than I did. But patience, you know, patience is more than just not getting frustrated in a situation. Patience to me is having patience to see that seed that you plant grow, right? Believing in yourself. Have patience. It's happening. You may want it quicker. We all do, but it's going to happen over time. If you keep doing, you know, I was talking to some artists, he's like, how do you get all this work? I'm like, I paint. I paint a lot. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
just paint. The more you paint, the more opportunities you're going to have. The more you talk about your painting, the more opportunities you're going to have, and so on and so forth.
Yep.
Pride. I have pride in myself. I have pride in what I do. You know what I mean? Like I get my hair cut. I dress nicely. I try to be clean. You know what I mean? Like I have pride in the way that I treat people and the way I want to be treated and so on and so forth. Control. Control is super important. I try to control the scenarios I'm in as best as possible. I try to control my mind as best as possible. I try to control my body as best as possible, like controlling what you do in your life. Energy. Listen, man, I'm 48. I'm getting tired. You know, I wake up and the bones hurt, the muscles hurt. but I'm not going to let somebody beat me out because of lack of energy on my part. So I'm going to dig down deep and I'm going to do more than the next person, right?
Yeah.
Motivation. Motivation can mean anything to anybody. It means many things to me. Motivation is what motivates you. I want the challenge. The challenge is motivating to me, right? Like I love overcoming the challenge. I was reading something today and they were like, you know, having an item doesn't make you happy. Getting the item is what makes you happy. Once you have it, you have it. It's like, all right, I have this. Okay, next. You know what I mean? I like the challenge of doing the project. I like the challenge, and the motivation is from that challenge, right? The motivation could be almost anything. The motivation could be taking care of your family, taking yourself, living up to what you feel like you should be in your life.
Yeah.
Love is super important. I love what I do. I love my family. I love my job. I love people just in general. I mean, I'm a social cat, and I enjoy talking to people on a regular basis. And it doesn't matter where you are in life or what you do. Everybody has their own interesting story. And listen, you're doing podcasts. Why do you do it? You know what I mean? Like, you don't know me, right? But I have a story that maybe is interesting to you, right?
Yeah.
And then money. I mean, at the end of the day, like, we can't bullshit each other. I do it for money, right?
Yeah.
And it's not that I don't do projects for free. I mean, as time went on, I always wanted to be able to donate projects and do charitable work. And it wasn't until probably my 20th year that I could comfortably do it. Not that I didn't do it prior, but the last 5 years I've been able to do more and more and more and go above and beyond. But I still do it for the money. You know what I mean? Like I still do the money allows me to have freedom to do more projects and to raise my prices or to hang out with my family now, to have those nice weekends on the hammock. I mean, the money allows me that freedom. So we can't forget that as well.
I love that. Now, for you, as you learn so many different styles, did you have a mentor for yourself or for different styles that you learned? Was that something that, hey, I just, I sought out classes and I went to those and then I, practice and practice? Or what was kind of your progression to learn all the different styles in your repertoire?
So I never went to classes for murals. I did the class for the Venetian plaster because it was a technical, it was truly a trade, and I needed my guy to learn it. For murals, around the same time when I was doing the forum and the classes, I love the idea of passive income. So I basically took a ton of money and I dumped it into filming artists painting murals or painting landscapes or portraits or what have you. And I found the artists through the forum that I created. So these top artists, I would make the moderators on the forum, and then I would offer them a deal. I'd be like, listen, I'm going to come out, I'm going to film you how to paint a fresco painting or trees, whatever it may be. And then we're going to sell it. I'll take care of the overhead and I'll split the profit 50-50 with you. Now, mind you, YouTube came out later and destroyed the whole thing. But what I learned was, because again, in school, I would fall asleep, right? I can't sit there and learn, man. It's super hard. But while filming these, I'd pick up little things from this guy and a little from that one, a little from that one. And I would incorporate it when it made sense to in my murals. And now I would say my style is a combination of many styles, all grouped into one. But it's something you kind of learn as you go, right?
Absolutely. Now, The Business of Faux,
Yes.
the book. Talk about how The Business of Faux, the book came about for you.
It's the same time period, probably around 2009, 10, something like that. And I was approached by a lady and she was like, I have a publishing company or whatever, and we want to, make a book. And I was like, all right, this is amazing, man. What a great opportunity, And so I banged it out. My wife has a writing degree. So what I would do is I would just take this little tape recorder and I would talk into it. I made a layout of what I thought it should be, the chapters, and I would just wrap it in. And I would give it to her and she would type it up and she'd make it grammatically correct. And one of her gifts is she's able to keep books within the person's voice. So it sounded like me still. And the book did well. I mean, it was a good book. I mean, it's too outdated at this point because again, it's prior to a lot of the technology we have today with the internet. So it's still a good book because it talks about the social aspects of being comfortable selling and networking. And there are some lessons in there that, in itself could take you to a successful spot within the art world or any business. But if I had to do it today, it would, there's so many new things I've learned,
Yeah, I love it. So as your career's progressing, we do the judge's house, and then there's a whole bunch of additional doors that begin to open. You have some time on bar rescue, tattoo rescue. Talk a little bit about how you move into some of the TV, and I know you did athletes like Dennis Rodman and Mike Tyson, Chevy Chase. So maybe start with some of the TV episodes, and then we'll move into the athletes and professionals.
All right. All right. So it, it was because of the full form that I built that I had all these artists from all over the country. And a lady ended up coming on there named Nancy Hadley. And she was the art director for Extreme Makeover Home Edition, which was with Ty Webb, move that
Yeah.
bus, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And I mean, they were cranking out shows, and she needed artists in every state. So she would come on the forum and basically grab artists from different states to do the projects.
Yeah.
So they had one in Connecticut, and I don't remember what town it was, but she reached out to me and she asked if Mike and I wanted to go, and so we went and we cranked it out, and we really hit it off with her for many reasons. One, we liked each other. Number two, Mike and I were really good going on job sites and just being cool. You know what I mean? Like artists tend to, not all artists, but tend to be needy.
Huh.
And if things go wrong, they'll go to the designer or the owner and we didn't do that, man. We were so quiet about our job site.
Yeah.
If something arrived that was wrong, nobody really knew about it, and maybe if we had a good relationship with the designer or the owner afterwards, we'd tell them about it because it was all solved. But that's it. So she loved us because here you have this art director who's, in charge of basically the art and the creative side of an entire house. So we're one component of an entire house, and she's got everybody chirping in her ear, but not us. So
Yeah.
we go in, we bang it, and we get out of there. And she's like, "You guys are amazing. What are you doing next weekend? We got a house in Jersey." So Mike and I go to Jersey. Now, mind you, we're not getting paid for this. We're like, this is a cool experience.
Yeah.
Who knows what can happen? You know what I mean?
Yep.
To Jersey, kill it again, right? So then I think after that one, I forget if she brought us to another extreme makeover or not at the time, but we did do a couple more of them. At that time, she gets a job as a director, the art director for, I want to say, Kitchen Nightmares. And she's like, Pat, she's like, I got a project, Kitchen Nightmares, in I think this was Miami at the time. And she's like, I got money for you. And I was like, okay. So got paid. It was good money.
Yeah. Yeah.
The only issue with the TV shows is you go in at night and you work all night till the morning. You kind of get made promises like you're going to get help, and there's no help. I mean, it's chaos,
Yeah.
but thankfully I love working in chaos. Like chaos, for some reason I'm able to do it and just handle it. It doesn't bother me. I don't mind if things are missing or things go wrong. I mean, don't get me wrong, I get frustrated like everybody else, but I
Yeah.
handle it well. So I started getting paid for these. So she had me doing in Miami, then she had me doing in there's a couple other Kitchen Nightmares. Then she got Tabitha's Takeover, because season, off season, hired us to do that, then Bar Rescue. And I started making really good money doing it. I mean, it was good coin, but it was hard work. It was super hard. I remember one time, I think it was the Bar Rescue. We were doing it in Boston, and I remember finishing at 6 in the morning and just driving home, just head nodding. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah.
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 And I remember Kitchen Nightmares. There was one project, they had us do it all night, and I think it was like winter or something like that. But they would ask for these projects that you would need weeks to do, and you do it in one night. They're massive projects. So there's one where we had to take this dining room and make all of the walls look like walnut, wood, like mahogany, right?
Yeah.
And it's layers. You've got to paint it, then you've got to glaze it with the grain of the wood, and then you overglaze it, right? Nothing was drying, like nothing. And they're going to be filming the next day at like 10, 11 o'clock. And on this particular episode, they invited me and three guests to come and be actually one of the diners there, right? So if you go to this episode, you'll see me at the table eating that day. But I remember leaving in the morning and touching the wall and be like, that's not dry. And I remember coming back to eat. I touched it again. I was like, it's still not dry. And I didn't say anything. Nobody said anything to me. And that was it. So, there's things that go along, but it was great
Yeah.
experience. I would not, we can go back to energy and all that and effort. At 48, I probably would not do a TV show today. It's physically and mentally just exhausting, so
Yeah.
that is one I'd probably pass on.
Well, and I think something that you said there that's interesting is, I did it because I thought it was going to be a great opportunity. And I wasn't doing it because of the financial, right? Like, I mean, if that was my one metric, I wouldn't do a free job, right? Like I wouldn't have gone and done that. But because I said, well, you never know what could come of it, right? It could just be something that I say, hey, you know what? I painted a wall in this TV show and that's so cool. Or it could
Yeah.
be
You know what I
dominoes.
mean? Like the way I look at it is like if you're a company and you market yourself, you may put an ad in the paper or an ad online or a billboard or what have you. Like those are your marketing dollars, right? So my mentality was these are my marketing dollars. My marketing
Yeah.
dollars is my labor, right? And I knew, listen, at worst case, I can put in my portfolio, I worked on these TV shows and I'll leverage that how I want. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
one way or another, I'm going to get something out of it. I'll make that happen. But you figure it out.
I love it. Now, as you're progressing, you also have the opportunity to work on different murals for different professionals. And I know Darren Prince, who I've had on the show, ends up being a good connector for you. So I don't know how you guys entirely got connected, but maybe talk a little about, Dennis Rodman, Darren, Mike Tyson, and some of those folks.
All right. So coming up to me with Darren, I'd already been doing work for Judge Judy, Rosie O'Donnell. I've been doing some work for Russell Simmons. Like there were a bunch of Burt Young.
Yeah.
I had a good sort of, as far as like that celebrity sort of athlete world, I had a good sort of take on that. And then I got a call from this guy named Nick Cordasco, who runs, today he works hand in hand with Sly Stallone, and he runs and is partners with him in Sly Stallone shop. So I got a message from Nick, and he wanted to do a signing with Burt Young. Burt Young played Uncle Paulie in Rocky. Burt Young
Yeah.
is also an artist. And at this time, I'd been starting my social media marketing company as well, which is a whole nother story. But I was helping him out with that. He lived in Long Island area in Port Washington, and we kind of became friends. Like he's like this old school Italian guy, and I come from an old school Italian family, so we jive pretty well. And he was an artist, and I was an artist, and blah blah blah. So Nick reaches out and wants to do a signing with Burt Young. Burt Young is, man, he is a really sweet, loving guy, and he's also can be one of the biggest pains in the asses in the world. I mean, he's difficult to deal with. You know what I mean? He's
Yeah.
headstrong. He cares about money, but he doesn't care about money. Like it's a weird thing. So Nick had come up and he was like, I have all these, I did a signing with Stallone. I have this exclusive signing deal, and I want to get Bert's signature on it as well. He's like, I don't need it, but I'd like to have it. He's like, this is what I'm offering for this amount of signatures. I go to Bert. I go, hey man, here's this offer from this guy. Do you want to do it? And Bert was like, I'll do it for this amount. And he added $500 on it. And this is what Bert would do. Bert
Yeah.
had these paintings. He would go into his house and he had hundreds of paintings stacked on top of each other that he did. And he couldn't sell them because he was such a pain in the ass. I remember one time he's like, Pat, let's see if we can get 1,200 from this. And I found somebody. They're like, we'll give you 1,200. I go, Bert, sold your painting for 1,200. He goes, I want 1,500. I was like, you got to be kidding me, man. What?
Yeah.
So I stopped doing anything with him as far as that goes. But this specific one, we were $500 away, right, from getting this deal done. So I look online, I look up this guy, Nick, and I see at the time his name is connected with Prince Marketing Group, which is a marketing company, full service, owned by Darren Prince. And I
Yeah.
started looking at the clientele, and I was like, fuck, these are all good, iconic figures. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I called Nick back, and I'm like, hey, man, I was like, here's the deal. Bert wants $500 more than you're offering. And Nick's like, I'm good. And I was like, all right. I was like, how about this? I'm going to cover the $500 out of my own pocket as long as we have dinner afterwards. He's like, yeah, no problem. So I go there with Bert or with Nick, meet at Bert's house. We do the signing. I give him the $500 extra and we go to dinner. And again, I use that $500. That's my marketing money, man. I mean,
Right.
that's what most people use for billboards. I'm getting in front of somebody who is in front of other people that can, make my career go further. It's leveraging it, right? So we have dinner, we get along great, and he connects me with Dennis Rodman. So Dennis Rodman, I start doing work for over the years, and I would say Dennis Rodman. Trying to think what he gets. Dennis Rodman actually referred me to Mike Tyson. So I'd been doing work for Dennis for a few years, and I was going to LA one weekend, and Dennis calls me a couple days before I'm leaving. And he's like, Pat, he's like, I'm doing some business with Mike Tyson, and he's like, I want you to do a painting for him and his wife. How do you say no to that? So I'm like, all right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
this is a freebie though, and it's also 2 days before I'm leaving. So I'm like, all right, I got it. Don't worry about it. So find some images online, and I just start working on it. And it's probably a 2 day thing. It's I'm doing other things. It's not something I planned. So I get a good ways through it and I'm feeling very comfortable. I'm like, I can get this done, no problem, very, very easy. Then I get a call from Darren Prince. And Darren's like, hey man, he's like, I'm in Rhode Island and I'm in Connecticut. It's about an hour and a half away. He's like, I'm in Rhode Island and at this show with Chevy Chase, and he needs some help with some stuff. I want you to come up and meet him. So like here I am, I'm in the middle of doing this painting for Dennis Rodman, for Mike Tyson, and I have limited time. I'm flying to LA the next day, and I'm like, but how do you turn that down? So cruise up to Rhode Island, meet him, get the intro. Now I have a connection with him, which I'll follow up when I come back from LA. Come back, finish the painting, fly to LA, meet up with Dennis. We go to Tyson's ranch, and I meet Tyson for the first time, which is, if you like that story, I can give you that too. It's an interesting one. But
I would love it.
all right, so I meet Tyson I meet Robin out front. We walk in. I got this painting rolled up, and I just done this awesome portrait of Rodman for him too, and really really cool piece. So I had that as well. And we walk in, and it's kind of like a large room, and there's like offices, down the side with doors. So we walk in, and I hear in one of the rooms, Rodman, get in here. And it was Tyson. I was like, oh my God, listen, I'm pretty cool in these situations. But man, I watched Tyson growing up, so I was
Yeah,
kind of excited.
right.
I'm going to be honest. I was like, oh shit. So we walk in there, and there's like, maybe 6 or 8 people there, his wife and some guys, and Tyson's sitting there, and he's got a joint behind his ear, and it's just smoke everywhere. Like he's just, he's puffing up. And so we walk in, and Tyson's like, who's that? And Robin's like, oh, this is my boy Patrick. He does these paintings, and he opens up this painting that I did of Rodman. And Tyson's like, whoa. And then he opens up the painting of Tyson and Kiki, his wife. And Tyson goes out of his mind. He goes, come over here, man. He's like, I should get you on the podcast. He goes, oh man, here's the thing. He's like, I want a painting of me, and I want to have horns coming out of my head. And I was like, what? He's like, yeah, man, I want these horns coming out of my head. And I was like, man, this guy's high as fuck. I was like, all right. So, we're hanging out for a while, we're wrapping it up. And then at some point I'm with his wife, and I'm like, listen, I was like, does he really want a painting of him with horns? He's like, yeah. He's like Caesar, like horns, like, and I was like, all right, how big do you want? He's like, big. He's like, I want it 10 feet by 10 feet. I'm like, okay. So like, let me take a picture of the face he wanted. And he made a face. I took the picture, and I went back and I created and that one they paid for, and they were very kind with the whole experience. And it was a good project. It was a great one. So finally, when I delivered to him, this time it's years later, after working with Nancy Hadley. And so I reach out to her. I'm like, Nancy, I'm going to ship you this painting. Can you stretch it? And, I'll bring it to meet Tyson, and we can bring it to present to him. And she's like, yeah. And so we go to meet Tyson. We got it covered in cloth. Tyson comes out, he goes crazy over it, and Nancy takes some pictures with me and Tyson. And it's funny because I look at the picture afterwards, and I'm sitting there, next to Tyson, and my paintings in the background, and Tyson's got his mouth on my ear like he's biting my ear off. And I was like, oh my God, what an iconic moment. And Nancy was great. She was such a help. And she passed away since. She ended up getting cancer, but she was one of the sweetest, kindest ladies. I don't know any artist other than her that has done more for artists in general ever in my life. I mean, the amount of artists she was able to give opportunities to, and just be a cool person,
Yeah.
So that's my.
I love it. So as you've progressed and, just continue to do jobs, at this point, what are jobs that really excite you? And what are things that you're like, maybe 10 years ago I would have done that, but I just don't think that's, something I'm really passionate about today.
Yeah, I'm definitely more towards exterior buildings and commercial projects, whereas early on I did a lot of residential projects. Residential projects, and it's not that I don't do them anymore. I just do more commercial and buildings, because there's a freedom there. There's a creative freedom where you get to sort of express yourself a little more. Whereas if it's residential, it's a little bit more buttoned up and honed down because it's inside a dining room or a bedroom or what have you, and it's more classical. And I really did focus a lot on the classical style painting and classical painting in general early on. And then I realized I was doing it more because I was within this decorative painting world on the forum. And that was what was considered, because we had foreigners. We had a lot of people from Europe and France and Italy, blah, blah, blah. And that was a style. And these guys were like the gods to us, man. Like, I was a kid, and these were older. These guys were doing work that was just like mind blowing. So I would focus on learning a lot of that. And then as I got older, I found my own rhythm, and that's my rhythm.
Yeah.
My rhythm is more a little bit kooky, a little more splash of color, something a little bit more interesting like that.
I love it. Well, one of the last things I want to ask you about is, this balancing act in saying yes versus saying no. And what I've found, and I haven't been running my business 25 years, but 13 years, is
Yeah.
I'm so glad I said yes early on to so many things, because it opened up doors that I would have never imagined could have been there. At the same token, there became this weird spot in my life where I needed to start to say no to things so I could say yes to the right things. And I always had this like mental game, like, but I said yes to that one time and it worked out for me. If I say no, then it might not open this other door, right? Even though I knew it was the wrong thing to be doing, right? I was like, this isn't the best use of my time. This isn't the best, opportunity for me to pursue. But it's that tough juggling act, right? Because you're like, well, what if it does turn out to be this? So how have you done that in your career and in your life? Been able to pivot from certain yeses that maybe you did in the beginning. Today, you're like, I don't think that yes is still as beneficial as what it was 20 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I mean, saying no feels wrong. There's a
Yeah.
point when you start a business and you have no work, so you have to say yes.
Oh,
And then it becomes a habit, and it's ingrained in you. So then you get to the point where you have too much work and you have to say no, but it feels like you're going against the grain. Like
right.
I was looking to just get opportunities to say yes when I first started. Now I have them. I'm going to say no. The way
Yeah.
I deal with it, I judge it from um, what the project is, what it means to me, who it is. If it's a client from way back in the day, I grandfather people in. There's a courtesy given there. Um, but if I have to say no, if there's a logical reason on why I have to say no, I always find a solution for them, right?
Mhm.
And by doing that, by finding a solution for them, I found that years later, and this is something you don't know when you first start a business. You have to be in business for a while to know that it's going to work out. Like you can't guarantee this, but by finding a solution for that person or those people over the years, I found that later on it all comes back to me and I don't lose out. So that same thing I was worried about losing out on, that opportunity, I don't lose it because I found a solution with somebody else. Let's say it's a smaller mural and I don't have time. I'll give it to this guy, John, I know, right? He's a great artist, John Line, and he'll do it, and then guess what? Years later, when they have a bigger project, they don't go to John, they go to me, you know?
Yeah.
Um, so that's how I feel okay with it.
Absolutely. I love it. Well, Patrick, I want to say thanks so much for sharing your story and your journey, man. It's so cool to see the progression over the last 25 years and all the amazing things you'll continue to do. And hopefully, 3 years from now, we can do this again and highlight all the fun and amazing things you've done since.
Thank you. I'll put it in my calendar now.
My man,
All right. Take it easy, brother.
you're a rock star.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Great job.
No, thank you. I appreciate you being transparent and just sharing the journey. It was a lot of fun.
Oh, man, we could do this for hours. When you're an entrepreneur, we got stories upon stories, and half the war stories that we know are unbelievable experiences. The average person wouldn't even get why that was a success story.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is 100% true. Well, I appreciate you hopping on. I'm big on feedback. I know you've done many an interview in your career. Anything that you're like, hey, Phil, maybe don't do this, or hey, you could have done this a bit better. I'm very open to what could have been better.
You did great, man. You let the person talk. You follow up quickly. I don't know, man. I thought you did wonderful. So keep at it.
Yeah. Well, if there's anything that comes to mind, let me know. I'm very open to that. But no, I really do appreciate you and your time. And yeah, I'll send you a message. I'll look, but maybe 3 or 4 weeks out from when I'll release it. But I'll send you a message and then make sure to tag you in it.
Yeah, send me some assets and I'll help promote it. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you like it cut up beforehand, or do you like the raw video and have a team or someone do that for you?
No, usually what I like is they'll send me like a minute clip, they'll give me like usually 3-minute clips to choose from.
Yep.
And then I'll pick one of those and plop it up. So if you don't mind, that would be wonderful.
Nope, absolutely. I can do that. I just want to make sure I got to you in the easiest way possible. So perfect. Well, hey, thank you again, Patrick. Have a good rest of the day, man.
Be in touch. Bye.
Thanks.